All right, what's up guys? It's Mike from Cornfield Customs and welcome back to another episode on the channel. Today we're going to do another set of frame rails bent on the mandrel bender, but this one's going to be a little different. I'm going to show you from start to finish how to lay everything out, clean it, prep it, get it ready to bend, and then we're going to bend it. And then these rails are a little special because I haven't done a series or an episode yet on rails that have the easy way and the hard way on the same rail section. So I'm going to show you how to lay all of that out. We're going to bend it, change the machine around from hard way to easy way, bend our easy way bends, and then we're going to turn it back to hard way, and we'll finish out the rail system. So I'll show you from start to finish how to do a mandrel bent 2x4 120 wall rail with both hard and easy way on the same rail. So stick around. So first things first, I've got the rails already cut to length, and then I have to go in and we're going to deburr the inside and the outside of the tube at both ends. This way we don't get hung up on the mandrel when we're installing the tube, or we don't get cut or anything like that. So I'm going to get after it and deburr the inside and the outside. Now I'm going to throw some latex gloves on, and we're going to use some lacquer thinner to clean the tube, get all the oil off of it. That way we can lay out all of our bend lines and dimensions, and we don't have to worry about them either getting wiped off or smearing because we tried to draw them on top of the oil. I'm here at the front of our tube, and this isn't the front of the frame, this is just what I'm deciding is the front. And the front is what is not bent. So what I do for that is I just draw an arrow with an F, so I know that this is the front of the tube, not the frame, and I'll pull all of my dimensions from this line back. So when you're bending frame rails, whether you're bending them, I guess, even if you're cutting them at home, a good thing to get in the practice of is having all of your seams in the same place. Either that be on the inside or the outside. That way it's all symmetrical, it looks better, shows a little bit more professionalism. So when I lay the rails out, I make sure they're even together here at the end, and I'll do them together as one unit so all the lines line up. And I make sure that one has the seam up and one has the seam down. That way, when I bend them opposite of each other, the seams will be on the inside is where I like them, but if you get them and you put them on the outside, that's fine too. But they'll always be on the same side, either facing inward or outward. You don't have them on the same side of the rail, both facing left or both facing right. So just a little thing that I like. So I've got our bend tech worksheet here that has all of our bend information, where each bend location is, what direction it is, and bend angle. It even has the angle we need with the calculated spring back. I've gotten that question a lot on these videos of how do you calculate spring back. So I don't personally calculate the spring back. What it is bend tech calculates it for me. I bent a bunch of tubes, just random lengths of drops, and you do a projected bend. So say I wanted a 90-degree bend, I just type in 90, and then I measure it with a digital protractor, and I can put in desired bend, achieved bend, and I do that on a bunch of different bend angles, 20, 40, 45, 60, just random bend angles, whatever you choose. And when you type that in, it will build a spring back calculator for this tube with this bender and these dies. So then it gives you the desired spring angle to achieve the angle you need based on bend angle itself. So that's how I do spring back. So from here, I'm going to pull our tape measure all the way down, and I will walk through each one individually and lay out all of our lines, degree, and which direction it bends. Got our sheet here, so bend 1, hopefully you guys can see that there. Bend 1 location is 9.699. I had a couple other people ask me on these videos in the comment section about, is it congruous or pretentious that I go to that many decimal points? Not really, because personally I work better in decimal points, and when I draw stuff in CAD and send stuff off to the machine shop, I always work in 3 points anyway, so I just keep it all the same. And if you're dealing, especially on frames, if you're dealing with, say, 1/16 of an inch increments, that could be projected pretty far by the time you get to 194.5 inch long rail. So at this point, by using decimals and getting as close as I can, I'm aiming small and hoping to miss small. Like, am I going to use a tape measure to get to 0.699? No. I can round up or down a little bit, but at least I know that's where that's supposed to be. And, I'm trying to aim small and miss small. So you can do it however you want. Personally, this is how I like to do it. So that's kind of the reasoning behind it and why everything's to the 3rd decimal point, just out of convenience, and it keeps everything consistent, whether it be a BenTech worksheet, a blueprint, or a file I'm sending to the CNC shop. So I try not to stray too much from everything being repetitious. So let's get in here and start laying all these numbers out as we walk down the tube. So I laid out all of our bend lines and bend angle and then direction when it changes from easy and then back to hard. I'll do a close-up on that in a minute, but next step is I've just got our little hash marks here where our dimensions are. So I'm going to take our square and I'm going to run down and I'm going to lay those lines out 360 degrees all the way around the tube. That way, as the tube gets flipped for directionality of bend, we can keep track of where we are, the dimensions, and we know exactly what needs to happen. Now we're ready to start getting the tubing bent. So I have a machine setting we have to do, and then we're going to lubricate the inside of the tube with some bending lubricant. So I'm going to reposition the camera and show you how we get the machine set up for initial bending. All right, we're going to turn our pump on. Then we're going to go to jog the spindle. That way we can zero everything out. You can see that the spindle position is at 0.5, and a half a degree doesn't sound like a lot, but over 15 feet or so, it means a lot. So I'm going to back the die up until it deadheads, and then we'll hold our 0 position, and now we're at 0. So we can exit out, and I'm going to go ahead and turn the pump off for now. Now I'm going to lubricate the inside of the tube for the mandrel, and I've got a 5-gallon bucket here of bending lubricant. So I'm going to take this brush and just liberally apply this on the inside of the tube. So as I shove the mandrel through, it will smear this up the tube as it goes, and it'll help lubricate everything during the bending process. So it's pretty messy. Let me grab a rag and I'll wipe my hands off. So I'll wipe off some of the extra lubricant. And I'm going to slide the tube up into the die. Come around the back, make sure our mandrel's all lined up. And I'm going to slide the tube, get it started on the mandrel there, and then I can go to the back side of the tube and shove it all the way forward. Now I'm going to turn our pump back on, and we're gonna go to single bend, and our first bend angle is 46. So we'll type in 46 degrees, and then I'm gonna run through our cycle here. So we're gonna extend the mandrel, then the clamp, then the pressure die. That'll all be here on the controller, and I'll show you what it looks like on the bender itself, and we'll get to bending. So I'm extending the mandrel, which is shoving the mandrel up inside the tube. And I use this piece of 1/8 inch flat bar against the face of the die to line up the start of our bend. And then before I extend the clamp, I take a piece of tubing and stick here in the end so I can kind of hold down on it and keep my hands away from the clamping die. So here comes the clamping die that holds it in there. And then I will extend the pressure die, which is back here and keeps pressure on the tube. And while that's working, I'm going to double check that our spring angle is at 46. The machine is set at 46. And now I can just proceed with the bend. When the machine reaches 46 degrees on the spindle, I'll retract the mandrel, which is pulling the mandrel out of the tube. Then I can retract the pressure die. Then I can retract our clamp die. Then I can manually swing the arm back, and I can pull this tube out just a little bit, and I can reverse the die. Once it's back to its home location, I'll come up. Next bend is at 96, so I'll change that on our input here. And then I just repeat that process with each bend angle. So I'm gonna move the camera out of the way so I can continue bending, and I'm gonna get the next two bends done before we have to switch to the easy way bending. At this point, this is where we're going to deviate from our normal bend schedule on a single rail. So normally if there's no easy way bends on the same rail, if it's all hard way or all easy way, and I don't have to do a die change, we can just bend this whole rail up one shot. But that's where the problem comes in. So now we have to be able to bend the easy way. So to do that, I have to change the entire machine apart. I have to change wiper die, pressure die, clamp die, female die, recalibrate everything, and it's a big to-do. So before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and get our other rail that I set aside earlier, and I'll get it to this point, and then we can go ahead and proceed to tear the machine down and get it reset for easy way. And then after we bend the easy way, I'll have to reverse and tear the machine down and reset everything up for the hard way. So that's why doing easy way and hard way bends on the same rail is kind of a pain, because you have to reset the machine, which isn't like a 5 or 6 minute die change. It takes about 45 minutes to an hour to change everything up, recalibrate, and do a test bend. So I'm going to pull this tube out of here, get the other one ready to bend. We'll get to this point, and then we'll switch the machine. Got the second rail loaded up on the table. So I'm going to pack it full of lube, and then we'll get it in the machine. From here, we just repeat what we did on the first tube, turn the machine on, set our first spring angle to 46. Then we'll extend the mandrel out. Check it with our gauge. And grab my piece of tube there to help hold that out of the way. Extend the clamp. Extend the pressure. I'm gonna double check 46. 46 at our bend. And then we'll bend. So this is where the real work comes in, is changing the machine over. So I'm gonna move a couple things around, make room for when we bring the overhead hoist in to help lift the dies off, and we'll get everything torn down, and I'll walk you through those steps. I did do a video on tearing the machine down from one way to the other a while back, so if you've seen that and you don't wanna watch this part, feel free to fast forward a little bit. If not, you'll see how I do it. All right, so I got some stuff moved around. First thing we have to do is we're gonna pop this support bar off the top here. And I've got a table here laid off camera. Once we get all the parts taken off, I'll show you, but I just lay everything on a workbench on wheels. And then we have to take this plate off our swing arm here. Then I move the swing arm out and I take a rubber faced hammer here. Pop that loose. Then we can lift that off. We'll bring in our tooling cart here. So there's the clamp die. So next up is the pressure die, which this one's the lighter of the two, but it's still really heavy and super awkward. So it makes it a chore doing this by yourself. So we've got those out. Now I can pop loose the bolts that hold the die in. So there's a different set of bolts for hard way tooling and easy way tooling. They're just different lengths for the difference in thickness of the die. I'll put these down in our cart. So I'm going to reposition the camera to show you the wiper die and its bracketry that also has to come off. So this is our wiper die here that helps support the inside of the tube and lets it slide in without kinking or wrinkling. And then this bracket that holds that on also has to come off. So I'll take the wiper die loose first so we can get it out of the way. And everything's a little bit harder because everything's covered in that bending lubricant. It gets everywhere. So everything's a little greasy and oily. So there's the wiper die. We'll get our wiper die bracket off and set on the table. All our parts and tools laid out that we took apart so far. And then the machine's mostly torn down other than taking the die off, but I have to bring in the gantry to come over and lift this thing off and swap them out because they're so heavy. And then we can reverse the process, put the new tooling in, and then we have to do some calibrations over here to the depth of our tooling. Since we're going from 4-inch wide to 2-inch wide, on our depth, we have some adjustments there. So let's get the gantry drug over and we'll get this, this tool pulled off. Got the gantry brought in, so I'm going to get everything hooked up for it so we can lift this die off of here. So we have these 3 eye bolts that thread into the top of the dies. And we'll lift that off. So then we'll reposition our die cart there a little bit. And swing our gantry out. And we'll get it set down. We'll undo our clips here, switch our eye bolts over, then I'll turn our cart around so we've got the easy way die at the back. Get it clipped in. So letting it down slow, kind of rocking the die to make sure it goes on, doesn't get bound up. Once it gets lined up, we'll let it all the way down. We'll twist it till it drops in place. Then we can take this off for the last time and get the gantry back out of the way. So now with the die swapped out, we can put the easy way pressure die on, which, like I said before, this one's the heavy one. Then the easy way clamp die, they just kind of hook in there. And here is the easy way wiper die. I'm just going to set that there for now because we've got some other stuff to do first. Now I can put the easy way bolts in that hold the main die down. Just like with everything else that has multiple bolts in it, you just lightly snug each one up. Then we come back and we tighten each one up. From there, we'll take our wiper die, clamp plate, and sit here, and we'll get that going back in. So to get a baseline dimension of where this needs to go, because we could put it anywhere we want. Well, to support the tube, we want to line that wiper die pretty much right at the apex of our bend there. In our position, I'm going to leave somewhat loose because we finalize the wiper die location once we get everything else set and we clamp a piece of tubing in. So just getting it in the approximate location and then just snugging it up. From there, we can put our top plate back on. There's our top plate. So we have to lift this up just a little bit to get that to snap into that, that opening, or that little machined way there. We can put our bolts back in. Then our support bar goes back on. Set our gauge back. So then we have to come, luckily there's a couple lines scribed on this adjuster. 4-inch wide bending the hard way to 2-inch wide. Our clamp die needs to come over another 2 inches, and then we need to adjust the pressure die to come over another 2 inches. So I'm going to reposition the camera, show you the adjuster nut for that, and we'll get that adjusted. So this is our adjuster nut here to move the pressure die ram in and out, and I have some basic notes here just from doing this over the years. I've made a little handwritten note to give me the ballpark dimension from this face to the end of our adjuster. So at the hard way, it was set up at 6 1/16, and we're about at 6 3/16. So that gives you the idea that just how much there's fine tuning depending on which batch of tubing we get. So for the easy way, I have it at 4 9/16 now, it's what's written there. But with, like I said, with each batch of tubing, it's going to vary. So if you get in that 4 1/2 to 4 9/16 range, it's going to be pretty close, and then we will adjust it when we get a piece of tubing in the machine itself. So the easy way is at 4 9/16. So we're going to check after adjusting that a little bit, see where we're at. We're at 5 1/2, so we still have about an inch to go. And we're at 4 1/2, so I'm just going to back it off just a touch. I'd rather be loose than too tight. So now we have to adjust the mandrel. So to adjust the mandrel, we have to extend the mandrel forward and have a reference mark from the front of this to the solid part of the mandrel without the detents. So I'm going to turn the pump on, extend the mandrel forward, and then we can adjust that. So with the pump off, we can swing our arm out of the way. Here you can see the mandrel with the die swung out of the way, and this is our adjuster here. So not only do I have to turn the mandrel up, I have to adjust it to 6 5/8 from the face of this die to the start of the apex on the mandrel. So I'm going to pop these adjusters loose. We'll just slide that there, and then I'll take a base measurement to see just how far out we need to adjust the mandrel. So currently we're at 7.5, and it needs to be at 6 5/8. So we need to adjust the mandrel outward towards the front of the machine. So we will start spinning that outward. So what I'm going to do, just to make sure we don't extend the mandrel so far out just on this set of threads, I'm going to disconnect it, spin the adjuster nut forward, so we've got about 5 threads left. And then we'll put the mandrel back on and not move that nut. So that's our safeguard for now. So from here, we can take our secondary. I'm going to snug this up just a little bit. So then we can use the second adjuster to adjust that out a little bit. And this makes quite the mess with all the bending lubricant everywhere. So here we're at 6 7/8. So we got a 1/4 inch to go. Give her a couple spins and see where we're at. So right there, we're at 6 5/8, so that's our good baseline measurement. So we'll snug these jam nuts down, and that'll be our baseline. So once we put a piece of tube in here and actually bend, it'll show us if we need to adjust the mandrel to prevent any wrinkling or creasing. So these are all just baseline dimensions. So from here, we need to put a piece of tubing on the mandrel just so we can finish setting up our wiper die. So I have just a piece of 2x4 120 well tube. I leave this one around just for this. So we'll slide it into place. Doesn't have to go super far in, just as long as it goes beyond the wiper die. And we'll turn the pump back on. We'll go to single bend. Our mandrel's already extended. So then I'll extend our clamp die and we'll clamp this into place. Make sure that shuts off. And then what I'll do is I'll go around to the back where our wiper die is. The bolts are snugged up. I'll take our rubber hammer here and I'll just tap that into place to make sure it's tight up against the back of this tube. Like here, it looks really good. So I'm gonna make sure that these are snug. That way it doesn't bounce back, it stays put. We'll just give it a couple smacks, make sure it's seated, and we'll tighten those up. From there, I'll extend the pressure die, and that's where I'll have to do the final tuning on our adjustment. It needs to come in contact with the tube and just push slightly and then kick off the momentary switch. If it doesn't disengage that switch, it's too tight. So we'll extend that over and we'll see what it does. So it didn't even engage the tube. Like usually you'll see it push on it a little bit. If I take my fingernail, I can get my fingernail just in between the die and the tube. So it needs to be a little bit tighter. So I'm gonna retract that and I'll tighten it up a half turn and we'll go from there. So now we will re-extend and we'll watch what the tube does and we'll listen to the machine. So I'm gonna move the camera and I'm gonna cycle that again so you can see it. It just slightly pushes up against the tube so you know it's, so you can see that it's tight. So I'm going to extend the pressure die again and watch this piece of tube right here. It'll flex just a little bit when the pressure die comes into contact with it, and then the switch will kick off. So there it's about to make contact. You can see everything tighten up, so we know that we're in the ballpark there. So next up, we'll retract the mandrel, retract the clamp die and the pressure die. We'll put in a piece of tubing out of this batch of tubing that we got from the mill. It's always critical to use the same material out of this batch so we know how it bends on the tubes that we have. So I'll retract everything out and we'll get a piece of tubing in the machine that is out of this batch and we'll bend it and see how it looks. So this piece of tube is off of this batch. Put some lube in there. We will slide the tube in. And this section of tube is just a drop off of the main rails that we already bent, so it's off even the same stick. So I'll extend the mandrel. Extend the clamp. Extend the pressure die. And I'm gonna set this to 90 degrees. A lot can be told in a 90-degree bend. So we'll bend it and we'll listen and we'll watch to see what happens to the tube, see if it bends nice and clean. So let's bend. So far so good. I don't hear any pops or splits or cracks. Now that we're 90, I'll retract the mandrel. Retract the pressure die. Retract the clamp. And we'll reverse the main die. All right, let's pull this out of the machine, sit it on the table, and we'll look it over. I've got a rag here with some lacquer thinner on it just so we can wipe the oil and everything off. And we can really look at the tube for any weird wrinkles, ripples, cracks, anything like that. But the good thing is, looking at it here in the middle, it looks nice, flat, and smooth. There's a little bit of a dip where the bend starts and stops. You're gonna have a little bit of that. Mainly, I'm looking for big wrinkles, creases, splits, and that this side isn't super bellied in. It is a little bit. I could probably adjust the mandrel out just a touch to kind of correct that, and I might. Actually, yeah, I think I'm gonna do it one turn, and that'll be about it. That way I'm not getting too far out on those threads. You wanna check every time you change the tooling or you get a new batch of tubing because it's always gonna react a little bit different. There's different tolerances per mill run, a little bit of different of chemistry in each one, so it's a good idea to check the material you're bending. That way you're not relying solely on previous measurements and tolerances from other batches of material. So I'm gonna adjust that mandrel out and then we can get ready to bend the other pieces of our rail. With that being said, all of this, changing the tooling out, doing test bends, all of that was so we could do 4 bends. And then we have to do it again to switch back to hard way for the last 2 bends on the rail. So that's why I kind of wanted to walk you through this entire process of laying out the tube and doing hard way bends, then switching to easy way bends and then back. That way you can see kind of what's involved, that it's not all just a big expensive machine that can do a job. There's a lot of labor that goes involved, especially when changing the tooling and stuff around, and I figured a lot of you guys would appreciate seeing that. So I'm going to move the mandrel one turn, like I said, just to bring that a little bit farther forward and maybe correct a little bit of that deviation. But if you guys are still tuned in at this point, I do really appreciate it. And if you can, go hit that subscribe button, and that way you get notifications for any time I post a new video. If you're already a subscriber, I greatly appreciate it. We're not done with this video yet. I still have to do 4 easy way bends, and then we have to switch it back to hard way and finish it up. So I appreciate you guys watching. Stick around for the finished rails, and I'm gonna get back to work. I adjusted the mandrel out one more turn, did another test bend real quick, and I was much happier with the results. So here I've got our first rail set up on the table again, and now I can go ahead and install that in the machine, and we'll perform our easy way bends and set it to the side and do the other rail, and then we can reset the machine again. I didn't add any extra lube inside the tube because there's already a lubricant inside of there from where we bent on this rail just a little while ago. So we got the tube slid in, I'm extending the mandrel, and then we'll slide the tube up to ensure that we've got our bend location right. That lined up at our guide. We'll extend the clamp die, and I'm gonna ensure we've got our bend angle right so we're not still set at what we were for the test bend. So we're at 16 degrees, just like the print. So one critical thing you have to remember is which way it needs to bend. That way we're not bending it backwards. So in our drawing, it comes up over the rear end, back down, and then kicks inward. So the smooth side is going to be on the out. So we need to bend this way so it kicks inward, and then we can kick it back outward. So double checking all of that and making a mental note. Everything looks good, we're lined up. Everything's closed. Let's make our 16-degree inward bend. And that's our bend, so we'll retract everything out. And I'm using this table this time because it's lower for the offset from going hard way to easy way. So I'll retract our pressure die, then our clamp die, and we'll retract. And I'll pull that out. Slide our table out of the way. Then we'll flip that around. We'll bring our table back in for a minute while we extend the mandrel. Grabbed a piece of wood there to help support that with it being off a little bit. Then we can extend the clamp die. And with our table being on wheels, as it bends, it'll just kind of roll with it, and we'll bend. So that's our first rail done. Done the easy way, I should say. So I'll get this rail out, I'll get the other rail set up, and we can put our little kick in there, and then we can go back to hard way bending. So I'm getting set up to bend the second rail the easy way. And like I said on the last one, you have to keep track of which direction it's bending. That way you get a match set that kick inward. So on the last one, I had the kick up facing upward. And on this one, I'm gonna have to have it facing downward. That way, the smooth side without the weld seam is on the outside as it kicks in. So always keep track of which side of the rail your weld seam is on and which direction the kick-ups and the previous bends are facing. That way everything stays symmetrical. And we'll retract everything out. So we'll retract the mandrel, pressure die, and clamp die, and the easy way bends will be done. So let me get this rail pulled out of the machine. I'll sit them up next to each other, and you can check our progress so far with bending 3 hard ways, 2 easy ways, and then we'll switch it back over after I show you that. So here are our rails to this point. So we've got our first hard way, second hard way, third hard way. And then we come up, we've got an easy way to bring the rails inward. And then another easy way to get them back to parallel. So now we get to switch all the tooling back to the way it was before to put the last of the hard way bends in. So I'll probably time-lapse switching the tooling around since you guys already watched that. It's just going to be a little bit backwards. So I'll get to switching the tooling and we'll finish these rails right up. It's a new day. I came in early on Saturday to go ahead and get the machine tore down and reset up for the hard way bending. I was getting a little late in the day yesterday and didn't feel like messing with it twice in the same day. So got everything set up, test bent. You can see that in the time lapse. So now I'm going to get the first rail reloaded into the machine, finish up our hard way bends, do the other one, and we're wrapped up with these rails. I'm going to go ahead and put some more lube in the end of the tube since I waited overnight. Just put a little bit more in there, that way we know we've got plenty, because it does start to break down a little bit over a couple hours or more being out in the open air. So we'll just re-lube it and we know we'll be good to go. All right, so we'll get our pump turned on here. We'll come down. Our first bend after easy way is 26. And then we can extend our mandrel. And that's our 26 mark right there. We'll line our bend line up with our gauge. So looking at our drawing here, it needs to kick up for the front. So it's gonna bend the same direction as the rear kick up. So I just wanna ensure that I've got that there, double check it, and we can extend the clamp, pressure die, and then we'll bend. So this is where things can get really interesting. We've got all these bends going on, and then this easy and hard way, so it's gonna wanna over center, so we'll have to pull it out, flip it, and then put it back on. So it can get really, really kind of irritating moving these big pieces around with all these bends, but luckily we shouldn't have to do that on this one. I get a lot of questions about why I don't clamp the rails to the tables. That way everything moves together. And the reason I do that is because things need flipped and changed, and it's an inconvenience to have to clamp and unclamp and, you know, reposition that way when As long as it's clamped in the machine, it'll hold the rail. So that's the main reason why I don't clamp the rail to the table as I'm working. So we're at our next line here, which is still a 22-degree bend angle. We're at 18 degrees, and we'll bend. So this is our first rail finished up, and I'll do the second one. I probably won't talk through it because you've already seen me finish this one. So we'll get the other one knocked out, clean them up, and I'll show you the finished product. All right, so there you have it. Hopefully this was a little bit more informative and how everything is laid out, and I changed the tooling to go from the hard way to the easy way, and it showed the whole process. So hopefully you guys really enjoyed it, and it was a little bit more insightful and kind of showed what was involved. So that's pretty much it, and I really want to thank you guys for checking this video out and all the other videos I've been working on. I greatly appreciate the continued support, and if you're new to the channel, please like, comment, subscribe, tell a friend. Let's help get this channel growing, and I can put out bigger projects, better content, and I can focus a lot heavier on the videos. So again, thank you guys so much for watching, and let me know what you think. And I'm gonna show you guys a close-up of the rails in the closing. So again, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.